Well, the title slide on your screen looks a little weird this morning. Um, I don't quite know why that is. It didn't look that way on my computer this morning, but it's not what a Tang web. Just a hand up. Anybody remember Tang or drink Tang? Thank you. Yes, the astronauts. They apparently did that, right? They drank Tang. What's that? Yes, thank you, Pete. Thank you. We're not talking about Tang this morning, as delicious as it was, and I'm sure full of many chemicals, but we are looking at the tangled web that has been woven by a man named Jacob. And this is taken indeed from Sir Walter Scott's poem where he speaks about deception. And it is a tangled web we weave when deceive we do. So Genesis 27, 1 through 28, verse 5 is where we will be this morning. And so we will take a look at verses 1 through 4 to kind of set the stage and give you an idea of where we're going. So as kind of has been custom for the past few months as we've looked at Genesis, we have broader passages to look at, number of verses that we're going over. And so I want to encourage you that we're not going to lose sight of the forest for the trees, because this is a passage that is communicating something on the whole regarding a very significant issue, which is Jacob's inheritance, Jacob's blessing that he obtains from Isaac through a very, very, very unsavory means. And it is important for us to see this because this ultimately comes all the way down the line, right? All the way down the line and realized in Christ. Right, when God makes this promise to Abraham, saying, "In you shall all the families of the earth, shall all the nations of the earth be blessed." We're asking the question as we go through Genesis, how is this going to happen? And we see it in Isaac, and then we see in Jacob an interesting character, because you think, how could it be that a man whose name means cheat or liar, like how is he going to be the conduit for the blessing to come to the Gentiles? How is this going to happen? And so this morning, I would turn your attention to consider that a tangled web might be woven by us, but the Lord is not beyond that, as though somehow he can't deal with it, right? He is superintending all things. This is something we cherish, we prize, we love. And that's what we'll see this morning. So I'll read the first 4 verses for us. When Isaac was old and his eyes were dim so that he could not see, he called Esau his older son and said to him, "My son." And he answered, "Here I am." He said, "Behold, I am old. I do not know the day of my death. Now then, take your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me, and prepare for me delicious food such as I love, and bring it to me so that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die." Now, just a little word here about this. Some of these words might seem familiar to you because if you listen to the words spoken by Isaac to Jacob, or to Esau here, you'll hear a similar sound if you remember what happened with Abraham and Isaac. Right, where Isaac asks, like, my father, and there's, "Here I am." All right, there's very similar language when there's this pointed moment as Isaac is about to be offered up on this altar, potentially at the hands of his own father, saying, "My father, my son." These are things that are being spoken, and this is not coincidence. Okay, this is evocative language for us to think, okay, there's a very intimate relationship that exists here. Because if you remember the other week, Isaac's love for Esau was deeper than his love for Jacob. Because Esau was the manly man, hairy man, the guy who went and hunted game and prepared him food. And what's interesting here is that as he is asking Esau to come to him, he is using the same language that has been spoken before, which is, "Bring me some game, make me some delicious food such as I love to eat." So this is a very strange thing to consider, that the relationship between Isaac and Esau was centered on food in some ways. It's like, you make good food, all right? But this is important for us here, because we recognize what happened in chapter 25, when Jacob basically steals the birthright from Esau over food. So Esau is a hungry guy. He goes to Jacob. It's like, "Hey, make me some food. I'm really, really hungry. I'm going to die if I don't eat food right now." He gets the food. And now we get to Isaac here as he's interacting with Esau. And the question is, "Hey, you're going to make me some food? I'm going to bless you for food." It's kind of a strange thing that there's so much centered on this food bit here. I think more of it than is warranted. But just think, like, there's This is kind of a weird relationship that exists. There's a favoritism that exists, which isn't healthy by any means. So, as we continue on here, the rest of the passage, and we look at what is happening with this idea of the blessing. And I'll tell you, the blessing is different than the birthright. The birthright is basically saying the family lineage, the inheritance is going to come to Esau, but then Esau sells it off to Jacob. So Jacob's like, all right, I'm going to get dad's stuff. I'm going to get the double portion of dad's stuff. But now there's this idea of blessing. Now these two are related. These two are tied together. But the idea of a blessing is basically, I want dad to speak well of me, and in such a way that it's kind of like there's a benedictory statement being offered here, saying, this is what I am hoping for my son. This is what I hope happens to him. And in the case of one of the patriarchs here, is a man who walked with God. This is a prayer, effectively, that's being offered over his son. And Jacob says, I know my dad doesn't really like me that much. He likes Esau more, but I have to get his blessing somehow. And that's what's going on here. It's being obtained in a really, really strange way. So what do we make of this? Jacob's blessing shows that God's purposes, small and great, will come to pass no matter the ill intent of human hearts, even as the selfish pursuits of those involved may produce the opposite results of what was sought. So there's a lot of language there, but let me try to break it down before we go any further, so that as you maybe have some time to write this down, you're able to think, what is being communicated here? What's happening as we're looking at the big idea? What we're seeing in this passage is we're seeing a promise that's been made to Rebekah, right? Isaac's wife. Remember, the promise was made, the older will serve the younger. And Rebekah loves her son Jacob. She really wants her son Jacob to be the one who takes the baton from dad and keeps going. And so Rebekah is thinking, how am I going to make this happen? Because by all accounts, Isaac loves Esau more, right? Isaac loves Esau more. He's the older. And so even though he might have sold his birthright, well, he's certainly going to be blessed. So Rebekah concocts an idea to say, let's do something. Let's fiddle around with things to make sure that God's purpose, because remember, it's the Lord who spoke to Rebekah, saying, the older shall serve the younger. Let's do something to ensure that this comes to pass. Now, if we're thinking about this rightly in the stream of what's gone on in Genesis to this point, this has happened before. This has happened with Abraham and Hagar. Right? So Abraham and Sarah get this idea. It's like, all right, I haven't had any kids yet. Maybe the clock's running out, so let's do something outside the bounds of what's acceptable to ensure that something good happens. Right? So they go and Abraham has a time with Hagar. They have a kid. They have Ishmael. And God basically says, what are you doing? This is not how it's going to happen. I am going to make sure this happens. I'm going to make sure that this comes to pass. And so Rebekah should have known from her father-in-law and mother-in-law that it is not a good idea to try to assist God in his purposes by sinning, right? We don't want to do that. So in this case, lying and deception is what's going to be used by Rebekah to ensure that Jacob receives the blessing. Now that being said, are God's purposes frustrated by human sin? Are God's purposes frustrated by people doing things that are bad, so that God looks and saying, oh, I was going to accomplish this for Jacob, but now Rebekah stepped in, and now there's deception going on, there's lying. Oh no, whatever will I do? And I want to assure you this morning as we look at this, and this is a theme that runs throughout Genesis, that regardless of the worst intentions of the human heart, regardless of the most insanely hideous moments in human history, God is not being frustrated in his purposes. And this is something that you need to grasp onto this week, because somebody may sin against you in such a way that you feel like, this is awful, and I can't get over this. This is terrible. I don't know what's going to happen. God, where are you? And then you hit a tailspin, okay? And I want you to understand, and we will look this morning at Joseph. We're going to look at the grandson, right, of Isaac. The grandson of Isaac is going to finally get it. And see how Joseph looks at this and says, look, I can't hold this against you because I know God is doing something in this significant. This is far beyond your intent. And so no matter the ill intent of human hearts, and what we know from Genesis 6 is that every intention of man's heart is only evil continually unless the Lord breaks in and changes it, right? So this is what we're always plotting. We're always deceiving ourselves into thinking that good things are going to come by sinful purpose. It's just we think that's what's going to happen. Now, on one level, God will accomplish his purposes, but it's not because. It's in spite of sinful human hearts. And so even in this situation, Rebekah's sin, Jacob's sin, does not frustrate the purposes of God. So even as the selfish pursuits of those involved may produce the opposite results of what was sought, and the other part of this I want you to see, not only confidence that God's purposes will stand, but I also want you to see this morning that sin backfires. Right? In this case, you will observe Rebekah with her favored son Jacob, wanting him to be close and near, and because of what happens in this episode, Jacob is driven from his mother and never sees her again. Right? So rest assured that if you try to accomplish some good ideas by just going ahead and short-circuiting God's purposes and plans through what he's clearly communicated in his word, it's not going to accomplish the right thing for you. It's just not. So a very tricksy and false young man. Jacob is tricksy and false. Let's see how this plays out. Now Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So when Esau went to the field to hunt for game and bring it, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, I heard your father speak to your brother Esau. Bring me game and prepare for me delicious food that I may eat it and bless you before the Lord before I die. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice as I command you. Go to the flock and bring me 2 good young goats that I may prepare from them delicious food for your father, such as he loves. And you shall bring it to your father to eat, so that he may bless you before he dies. So, we have Rebekah, who's been presented to this point as a woman who has been a godly woman, right? She was a woman who immediately showed deference and submission as she comes to meet Isaac, right? She puts this veil over her face. She's trying to show modesty, and, she and her husband seeking the Lord for a child, and yet we get to this point, and this is not uncommon in the lives of God's people, where we might bottom out. Might do something foolish, right? Our hearts are revealed for an area where it's like, yeah, this is not probably a great decision. This is a terrible decision on Rebekah's part. Now, we're not going to throw out her whole character to this point, but we have to be aware that even though she's been presented very well to us, we're seeing this manipulative trend, this manipulative streak, where she is kind of going against everything that we've seen about her to this point by trying to basically take a husband who has thrown away his leadership of his family. Right? Isaac is just sitting there. He just wants food. Okay? Like, sit on the couch, eat some food. Rebekah's like, I got an idea. So Rebekah goes out, does this, deceives her husband. Some things are going on here. Some things are going on. And so Rebekah does this, and then Jacob follows suit because mama's boy, mama's son, is going to say, yeah, mom, let's do this. I know how to deceive. You know how to deceive now, mom, apparently, and we're going to do this together. So the blessing of Jacob was a demonstration of good purposes sought wrongly, yet worked by God for good in spite of their wrongness. Okay? So think about this. Jacob getting this blessing is a demonstration of there's a good pursuit, right? You should want your father's blessing, right? If you have a godly father, you should want your father's blessing. It's a good thing. And so Jacob is like, man, I know dad doesn't really like that, but I really want my dad to bless me before he dies. I would like this. It'd be a good thing. Rebekah wants that for her son, but the way they're going to go about this is not right. So it's good purposes. They're sought wrongly. And yet the strange thing about this is yet even in their wrongness, the way that they're being pursued, God is still working out a good purpose. And this is the whole idea. It's not being frustrated. God's plans are not being frustrated, right? When the older shall serve the younger, it's not like the sin of Rebekah and Jacob is going to somehow upset this so that God's promise is going to be nullified. Let's see what happens. Back in Genesis 25, 21 through 26, here is the promise to refresh your memories. And Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife because she was barren. And the Lord granted his prayer, and Rebekah, his wife, conceived. The children struggled together within her, and she said, if it is thus, why is this happening to me? So she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other. The older shall serve the younger. Okay, so this is the Lord speaking directly to Rebekah. This is different than what you're going to experience. Like, you're not going to go out and have the Lord speak directly to you apart from his word necessarily. The Lord might be leading you in certain ways, but this is a thus saith the Lord kind of moment, which we get in God's word as it's been completed for us. This is the Lord speaking directly to Rebekah here. And so this is kind of a hang your hat on the words spoken kind of moment, thinking, okay, the older Esau is going to serve the younger Jacob. So Rebekah is, throughout her life, just carrying this with her, carrying this, thinking, okay, Jacob's going to win out somehow, but I've seen Isaac favor Esau the whole time. I've seen him favor Esau, so I've got to figure out a way to get Jacob in Esau's place. Right? There's a good purpose, there's a good goal in view here, but the means are not justifiable. Genesis 25, 29 through 34 then. Once when Jacob was cooking stew, Esau came in from the field and he was exhausted, and Esau said to Jacob, "Let me eat some of that red stew, that red stuff, for I am exhausted." Therefore his name was called Edom. And Jacob said, "Sell me your birthright now." Esau said, "I'm about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me?" Jacob said, "Swear to me now." So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and drank and rose and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. Right, so we have this purpose that has been revealed to Rebekah, and I'm sure at some point Jacob probably heard this in these kind of private moments they had as favored son and favorite son are talking with dad or talking with mom, and Jacob speaking with Rebekah, and Rebekah said, "Jacob, one of these days, you're going to be the one served by your older brother." And so the first effort that Jacob makes to take this idea of a birthright comes through, I wouldn't say necessarily deception, but it's a pretty greedy ask, right? To think, give me birthright, I give you food. This is not like lifetime supply of food either. This is bread and lentil stew, okay? This is not something that if you think Thanksgiving meal, right, this past week, we had bread and lentil stew was the most filling repast we've ever had. And you think it a strange thing, like why would somebody sell their inheritance for that? And that's the question you ought to be asking. Because you're seeing the foolishness of Esau and the presumptuousness that he's demonstrating toward his father's love. Thinking, well, you know what, Dad's still going to favor me, right? So again, Jacob cheats his brother here. May not have lied, deceived necessarily, but he cheats his brother of his birthright at this point. So we've got efforts made. Efforts are being made to take. Efforts are being made to take something that has been promised. But would you ever encourage somebody to go about it this way? The answer is certainly no. So then you get to verses 8 through 10 again. "Now therefore, my son, obey my voice as I command you." Right? Now, if you'll remember, there's been a pattern throughout Genesis where Sarah instructs Abraham to do something. And what does Sarah instruct Abraham to do but sin? Good purpose, but sin. And Moses records specifically saying that Abraham listened to the voice of his wife. And this brings us back to Genesis 3. In Genesis 3, Adam listens to the voice of his wife, who is being deceived and tempted by the devil, who says, "Hey, you know what? You want a good thing, right? You want to be like God. So take of this, eat it." Not good. And in every instance, the men abdicated their responsibility to lead the women put in their care, in their charge, in order to pursue really selfish, foolish things. And so now Rebekah does this with her own son. "Go to the flock and bring me 2 good young goats, so that I may prepare from them delicious food for your father, such as he loves, and you shall bring it to your father to eat, so that he may bless you before he dies." So the game is afoot, right? There is manipulation that's being plotted here and planned, that Rebekah is instructing her son Jacob to sin. Something I tell my children with regularity. We have the 5th commandment, right? 5th commandment is honor your father and your mother, that it may go well with you in the land the Lord your God has given you, right? This is what we find in Exodus chapter 20. And when I tell my children, The fifth commandment, I say that is wholly applicable to you in every circumstance, except if I should ever ask you to sin, you tell me no. So you consider what a really awful thing is occurring here, where you're having this woman who has walked with God. She's not a stranger to the Lord, to his holiness, to his presence. And she's saying, Jacob, that's sin. Now, Jacob, if he were worth his salt at this point, spiritually, would have said, Mom, no. God's going to work this out somehow. But he goes ahead and listens. That leads us into a parade of very bad ideas that strangely don't ruin everything. Verse 14 through 17, so he went and took them and brought them to his mother, and his mother prepared delicious food, such as his father loved. Again, Isaac just loves this food. I don't get it. He loves this food in such a way he's willing to throw everything at his son over it. Then Rebekah took the best garments of Esau, her older son, which were with her in the house, and put them on Jacob, her younger son. And the skins of the young goats she put on his hands and on the smooth part of his neck, and she put the delicious food and the bread which she had prepared into the hand of her son, Jacob. So, deception, scheme, manipulation is now underway to the point where there is activity, right? So there's activity happening here. A parade of bad ideas is coming to fruition. So you have Jacob, who's being instructed by mom, here, you should sin, and here's what we're going to do. We're going to put goat skin on you so you feel like your brother. We're going to give you his clothes so that you smell like your brother. That's going to be the best we can do to go before dad, whose eyesight is failing. You're going to go before dad, and then he is going to bless you. He'll bless you. Let's manipulate. Let's accomplish this. Bad ideas. And yet, in line with the rest of Genesis and the Bible as a whole, this is not just isolated. I want you to be clear. This idea of God working his purposes through the very bad decisions, the sin of people, this is not isolated to Genesis, not isolated to Moses. Be encouraged that God is not beholden to the decision-making of people. The blatant sin of Jacob and Rebekah did not ruin the purposes of God, but were employed to bring about what was purposed before they existed. So before Jacob existed, before Rebekah existed, God has plans, God has purposes, right? He's not reactionary. God has established purposes that he is working out in this whole world. This beautiful tapestry with these billions upon billions of threads being woven all the time. Many times we don't understand what's happening with them, but the Bible tells us that God is a God who is accomplishing his purposes through all of these intricate threads being woven together. This is the picture we have from Genesis to Revelation. So let's see how this is happening. Let's see this thread and what God is doing with it. So Jacob went into his father and said, "My father." And he said, "Here I am." Again, evocative of what happens between Abraham and Isaac. "Who are you, my son?" Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Now sit up and eat of my game, that your soul may bless me." But Isaac said to his son, "How is it that you have found it so quickly, my son?" He answered, "Because the Lord your God granted me success." Now that should just kind of sting you to hear. That Jacob is justifying his lie by appealing to the Lord. Right? He's saying, you know, the reason why I'm here and the reason why it's because the Lord, right? The Lord gave me success. This is awful. This is mom sinning, mom instructing son to sin. The success that's being carried out here in front of Isaac is not the success given by the Lord. It's success accomplished by sin. And yet Jacob has the audacity to invoke the Lord's name, right? This isn't just saying like, well, God gets the Lord. This is the covenant name of God being invoked here, saying the Lord, the great I am, the one who rules over all things. He gave me success, and now I'm here, Dad. Isaac said to Jacob, "Please come near, that I may feel you, my son, to know whether you are really my son Esau or not," because he hears his voice, right? This is like, from what I've heard, the last sense that goes. Right, as senses fade over our lives, the last sense that goes typically is hearing. So you can still hear, all right? You might have failing eyesight, might not be tasting as well, but you're still able to hear. And Isaac is hearing his son speaking. And he knows Jacob's voice, he knows Esau's voice, right? You're a parent, you know your kids' voices. So Isaac hears the voice of his son Jacob. He's like, "You got to come by me because this doesn't seem quite right to me. Come by me. I'm gonna feel you because I know the difference in feeling between Jacob and Esau. Let's figure this out." So Jacob went near to Isaac his father, who felt him and said, "The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau." And he did not recognize him because his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands. So he blessed him. So that's what's going on. You have a son who is lying to his dad, a son who is invoking the name of the Lord in this pursuit of lying. Again, it's a good thing, right? He should want to be blessed by his father. But he's lying through his teeth to get there. He's lying through his teeth to get there. So in verse 30, as soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, when Jacob had scarcely gone out from the presence of Isaac his father, Esau his brother came in from his hunting. He also prepared delicious food and brought it to his father. And he said to his father, "Let my father arise and eat of his son's game, that you may bless me." His father Isaac said to him, "Who are you?" He answered, "I'm your son, your firstborn, Esau." Then Isaac trembled very violently and said, "Who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me? And I ate it all before you came, and I have blessed him. Yes, and he shall be blessed." So what's interesting here is that you have Esau coming in, and this is where we find this intersection between God's purposes coming to pass and the sinful decision-making of people. And we can't tell necessarily based on the words that are being used. It's somewhat limited dialogue. But when we think about this, Isaac would have certainly known what had been promised to Rebekah. The older will serve the younger. This would not have been isolated, right? We have this recorded. Moses has this for us, so obviously Isaac would have been well aware. So Isaac is aware of this fact, and you might be thinking, as this is all kind of coming to a head, that if you're Isaac and you're thinking about your relationship with your sons, you're thinking about what important things are being imparted here in this blessing. Thinking the family name is going to continue on through Jacob now. It's not going to continue on through Esau because birthright and blessing have now been taken by this son. And so this goes on, and in Isaac's mind, he has to be thinking, well, I guess what was promised just came true. Which is why I think that the last statement that he makes in verse 33, he says, "Yes, and he shall be blessed," is basically a sort of resignation to the reality that God's purpose has now come to pass. Now, it took a very strange route to get there. But for Isaac to get to this point where he's saying, "My son, I intended all the while, from the time he was born until the present time, I intended for Esau to receive the blessing. And yet somehow this son, who was named cheat, trickster, a liar, has now obtained the blessing that was promised by God before these boys were ever born." Now, this circumstance is obviously not one that gets repeated for us today, but what it does show us is that God's purposes, even through the sinful decision-making of people, do come to pass, and we can rest confidently that when we see things happening that seem completely out of line, that God is not out of control. Job chapter 42, after Job spends a good amount of time dealing with this, we call this the theodicy, right? The problem of evil. How could God be good if bad things happen? How could this be? We call this a theodicy. And so this is a question many people ask. They look at bad things happening, thinking, how? It seems like this God is not, he's not all powerful, because if he was all good, he'd certainly prevent bad things from happening. And Job, as he is confronted by God, as this comes to this place in his relationship, Job's relationship with God, where he finally is effectively at the threshold of saying, "God, where are you? Right? I've done well, I've done righteously, where are you?" And God puts Job in his place, not by saying, "Well, let me tell you all the intricacies, all the details, the things I'm working out for you so you can rest confidently." He tells Job, "I am God. And that's all you need to know." And he asks some questions. Where were you? Where were you when I created the earth? Where were you? And so for us to think, okay, we have questions about what's going on around us. Like, how are God's purposes being realized? It seems like things are not happening the way they ought to. This is a very, very, very hard thing for us to internalize at times. Job's response to being humbled, I think, is helpful for us in the same way we think about this situation where you have deception, lying, thievery. Like how's God's purpose being worked out here? Job says, I know that you, Lord, I know that you can do all things, and that no purpose of yours can be thwarted. Who is this that hides counsel without knowledge? This is a question. Job's repeating this question that was asked of him. Therefore, I have uttered what I did not understand, things too wonderful for me which I did not know. Hear and I will speak, I will question you, and you make it known to me. I had heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you. Therefore, I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes. So when we are tempted to look and say, like, I thought God was going to accomplish, I thought this was going to happen, I think, like, this is going to be different. I thought this is going to be different. God would tell us, just trust me. I'm not out of control here. The last thing you want to do is what Rebecca does. The last thing you want to do is what Jacob does and say, it seems to be spiraling a bit here, so I'm just going to just twist it a little bit. Help God out. And Job learned in this humiliation, it's like, you can do everything, Lord. No purpose of yours can be thwarted. So here's my place. Instead of saying, where is God? Or try to manipulate, what I'm going to do is just say, you're the Lord. You can do all things. And I repent. I repent of my attitude that says, this can't happen. God can't work this out, right? This is a problem throughout Genesis to this point. People constantly saying, God is not able. God is not able. And yet God is able repeatedly. Isaiah chapter 46, God speaks to the prophet by saying, to whom will you liken me and make me equal and compare me that we may be alike, right? So think about all the gods of the nations. Think about all the different worldviews and religious systems that you can imagine. God's saying, you just line them all up. Line them all up. He says, who will you liken me to? Who will you compare me to? Find a God like me. Those who lavish gold from the purse and weigh out silver in the scales hire a goldsmith and he makes it into a god. And they fall down and worship. They lift it to their shoulders. They carry it. They set it in its place, and it stands there. It cannot move from its place. If one cries to it, it does not answer or save him from his trouble. Remember this and stand firm. Recall it to mind, you transgressors. Remember the former things of old, for I am God and there is no other. I am God and there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning and from ancient times things not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will accomplish all my purpose. So as Isaiah is speaking to people, right, as his prophecy is coming to a people who are dealing with some severe hardship, right? The nation of Judah is being destroyed. And they're thinking, where's God right now? And I guess really put it basically, Isaiah is saying, don't worry about it. He's where he's always been. Just because your circumstances are not as you would like does not mean somehow God has lost his ability to accomplish what he pleases. And so in the case of Jacob and Esau, the promise made is being fulfilled even through the deceitful actions of Jacob and Rebekah. Even through. Not because, but through. And this is an important distinction to make. God is not condoning sin here, but he is accomplishing his purposes through it. So back to Romans 9, verses 10 through 13. You saw the other week. I just want to reiterate this so you hear Paul's very clear application of this. He says, not only so he's talking first about Abraham and Isaac, but also when Rebekah had conceived children by one man, our forefather Isaac, though they were not yet born and had done nothing either good or bad, in order that God's purpose of election might continue, not because of works, but because of him who calls, she was told, the older will serve the younger. As it is written, Jacob I loved, but Esau I hated. So what you have Paul saying is he's talking about Jacob, he's talking about Esau, and saying, look, these guys hadn't done anything yet. And yet God made a promise. These guys had not done anything yet. They had not accomplished anything. They had not done anything good or bad. And yet God had a purpose for Jacob and a purpose for Esau. And through all of these weird manipulations and machinations of these men's lives, God said, I'm going to accomplish my purpose. And the encouragement in this, I think, for us is to think that we cannot believe that somehow we are in a position to throw God out of control. This is very important. This is very important for you to understand. Not that you should try to, okay? Not that you should try to say, I'm going to try to frustrate God's purposes as best I can. Don't put that on the table. But what it is to say is that even when things occur that seem completely out of control, God's purposes stand. In the case of these men and their lives, and his purpose to work through them to accomplish saving realities, redemptive realities, they hadn't done anything good or bad. There's nothing that's going on at this point where God is saying, yeah, I'm going to work through. Jacob's going to make better decisions, or Esau is going to make better decisions. To say no. Jacob I've loved, Esau I've hated. The older shall serve the younger. This is what's happening here according to God's purpose. So finally, the redemption of epic backfiring, here's where I want to kind of settle things for you this morning. Here's where I want you to land your heart as you think about difficult circumstances. Things seem to come together in strange ways. I don't like this. Things aren't pleasing to me. How can God be working through this? The redemption of epic backfiring. So back to verses 41 through 45. Now Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him. And Esau said to himself, the days of mourning for my father are approaching. Then I will kill my brother Jacob. But the words of Esau, her older son, were told of Rebekah. So she sent and called Jacob, her younger son, and said to him, behold, your brother Esau comforts himself about you by planning to kill you. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice. Arise, flee to Laban, my brother in Haran, and stay with him a while until your brother's fury turns away, until your brother's anger turns away from you and he forgets what you have done to him. Then I will send and bring you from there. Why should I be bereft of you both in one day? So ultimately we're seeing, this is like Rebekah's moment where she is saying, my favorite son Jacob, I wanted him to get the blessing. He got the blessing. But now I'm presented with a problem. The problem is Esau is going to kill him. Right? So it's like the blessing was had, but what's going to happen if he dies? Well, there's going to be a problem at that point. So Rebekah wants nothing more than Jacob to be the one who lives before Isaac as the inheritor of the blessing and the birthright. And Rebekah goes to this point, basically, they're saying, you should flee to my brother Laban. Now here's where the backfiring occurs. In all of these efforts on Rebekah's part to ensure that Jacob is the one who is the inheritor of the blessing, he is the one who takes what belongs to Esau for himself. At this point, she encourages her son to go to the land of Haran. And in this, she is actually telling him to leave because he will never see her again. She could not have known this necessarily at this point, but what we find as Genesis plays out is that Jacob will never see Rebekah again. So I call this epic backfiring because all she wanted was for her son to be the one who stays, and yet in her pursuits of this, saying, I want him to be the one, I want him to be the one, I want him to be the one, is to say, no, guess what, Rebekah, you doing this is going to ensure that you will never see your son again. And that's a strange thing, but isn't that how sin works? It's to say, yeah, this seems like a good idea. I can do this my way. And then you actually end up getting the opposite of what you intend. And yet, again, this is not outside of God's control. In fact, what we see in this command from Rebekah to her son ends up being for his blessing. Though sin delivers the opposite of what it promises, even the worst decisions are redeemable in the hands of a good and sovereign God. So, following up on this instruction, I want you to see what goes on with Jacob here. Because if you know what happened with Isaac and Rebekah, Abraham said, I don't want my son Isaac to take a wife from the pagans. I want him to take a wife from among my people. So the same type of heart has to be had here for Jacob, saying, I don't want Jacob to have a pagan wife. I want Jacob to have a wife from my people. When Rebekah said to Isaac, I loathe my life because of the Hittite women. If Jacob marries one of the Hittite women like these, one of the women of the land, what good will my life be to me? Then Isaac called Jacob and blessed him and directed him, you must not take a wife from the Canaanite women. Arise, go to Paddan Aram, to the house of Bethuel, your mother's father, and take as your wife from there one of the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and multiply you, that you may become a company of peoples. May he give you the blessing of Abraham to you and to your offspring with you, that you may take possession of the land of your sojournings that God gave to Abraham. Thus Isaac sent Jacob away, and he went to Paddan Aram to Laban, the son of Bethuel the Aramean, the brother of Rebekah, Jacob's and Esau's mother. Now, is there the potential that Jacob would have gone to this land without this event occurring? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, okay? I don't want it to seem like this is the only possible world in which Jacob would have gone to this land to gather a wife from among his own clan. But think about the occasion. Think of the occasion of him to do this. He's fleeing for his life from his brother, and the one place that he's directed to go is to go to the place that he, if he would have pursued things properly to begin with, should have gone to. And so as we consider like how this plays out in our own lives, when we think about how our sinful decision-making, we might think, how can anything good come from this? Right? Forget the decision-making of other people and how they've sinned against us and thinking like, oh, God's out of control. What about your own sinful decision-making? Right? Jacob can't be feeling great about himself here. Right? His brother wants to kill him now. And if he has any conscience, which he surely does, he has to be feeling like, yeah, I got the blessing, but I lied to Dad. I lied to Dad, not a good idea. And so I'm on the run now. He's going to spend a lot of time thinking over the next several years about things. But when it comes to you, when it comes to me, there's the encouragement to consider that God's purposes will always stand regardless of the decision-making of other people. But I want you to rest assured that even in your worst moments, God is able, and if you are a genuine believer, a genuine follower of Christ, God will turn even your worst moments to your sanctification. That's a guarantee. Genesis 50, verses 15 through 21. I promised earlier we'd look at Joseph briefly. After everything that Joseph's brothers had done to him, right? Jacob's sons. Jacob the liar, we got sons who are lying left and right. Sell their brother off into slavery, terrible things. Jacob dies. His brothers saw and said, it may be that Joseph will hate us and pay us back for all the evil that we did to him. So they sent a message to Joseph saying, your father gave us this command before he died. Say to Joseph, please forgive the transgression of your brothers and their sin because they did evil to you. Now that's a lie. Right? That's not recorded for us in Genesis. It was probably not said. I mean, it could have been said, but it is very evidently not communicated to his brothers here, at least as far as Moses is concerned. So they're just piling on another lie to their brother. They're afraid they're going to die. So they say, well, Dad said this. And now please forgive the transgression of the servants of the God of your father. Joseph wept when they spoke to him. His brothers also came and fell down before him and said, behold, we are your servants. But Joseph said to them, do not fear, for am I in the place of God? As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. So do not fear, I will provide for you and your little ones. Thus he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. I want you to think, whenever the thought, the concept, the topic of God's exhaustive, universal sovereignty comes up, I want it to be for you what it was in Joseph's hands to his brothers, which is a comfort. I want you to think, instead of struggling, like, oh, how is God in control of all these things? To say, God is in control of these things. God is ruling over all things, and I need not worry. I need not fear. God is working his purposes out. This is what frees up Joseph to be a forgiving man. This is what frees up Joseph to not want to kill his brothers. Because as he observes the sinful actions of other people, as he considers his own actions, I mean, Joseph was not a perfect man. He is able to say, am I in the place of God? Do I have the ability to work these things out and to take it upon myself? No. And so he comforted them with this truth, that God is working in all things to accomplish his purposes for the good of his people. Acts chapter 2, the Apostle Peter, as he's preaching at Pentecost, says this, Men of Israel, hear these words. Jesus of Nazareth, a man attested to you by God with mighty works and wonders and signs that God did through him in your midst, as you yourselves know. This Jesus, delivered up according to the definite plan and foreknowledge of God, you crucified and killed by the hands of lawless men. So here, this is one of the most poignant moments in the entire Bible when it comes to seeing this intersection between the sinful decision-making of human beings and God's eternal purposes coming to pass. Because it is a heinous thing to deliver up the Son of God to crucifixion. It's evil. It's the most evil thing that's ever happened in the history of the world. And yet at the same time, it was that was required for these sinful, heinous, evil people to find forgiveness. Right? Without the shedding of blood, there is no remission of sin. There is no forgiveness of sin without the shedding of blood. The Son of God needed to have his blood shed for sinful people to be forgiven. And so there's this strange intersection here between the sinful decision-making of human beings and God's eternal purposes being worked out. And it is for us to say then, okay, as awful and wicked a decision might be, as awful as a situation might be, I can trust that God is working his purposes out. There is no conflict here. If Peter can preach at Pentecost that the Son of God's crucifixion was according to the definite plan and foreknowledge of God, even though it was carried up in the hands of evil men, you and I can rest assured that even our worst moments and the worst moments of other people are not frustrating the purposes of God. I'm just going to finish here by reading Romans 8:28 through 39. I want you to put this in the front pocket as you think about terrible decisions, as you think about sin, as you think about things that have been done to you or things that you have done. And I want you to soak in this regularly, especially in moments where you feel like things cannot get worse, they're just out of control. Paul says we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. For those whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, in order that he might be the firstborn among many brothers. And those whom he predestined, he also called. And those whom he called, he also justified. And those whom he justified, he also glorified. What then shall we say to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? He who didn't spare his own Son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also with him graciously give us all things? Who shall bring any charge against God's elect? It's God who justifies. Who is to condemn? Christ Jesus is the one who died, more than that, who was raised, who is at the right hand of God, who indeed is interceding for us. Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall tribulation or distress or persecution or famine or nakedness or danger or sword? As it is written, for your sake we're being killed all the day long. We're regarded as sheep to be slaughtered, right? Horrible, awful things happening to Christian people. Thinking, where is God in this? How could he be? And Paul is saying, look, God is for you, Christian. He gave up his Son for you. Right? That's the prime demonstration of God's for you-ness. No, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I am sure that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor rulers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus our Lord. Christian, God's purposes will come to pass for you. Romans 8:28 doesn't get thrown out the window when you have a really awful day. It doesn't get thrown out the window when you have a really awful experience. It doesn't get thrown out the window when somebody dies that you really love. Romans 8:28 is constant, it's steady, it's always there. Because his purpose for his people is this, that you be conformed to the image of his Son. That's it. And in Jacob's case, what we're going to see in the next week, right, is that Jacob's going to wrestle with God. God's going to do heart work in Jacob's life. And this is what God does with all of his people. He's going to employ certain circumstances. He's going to employ difficulties and hardships to accomplish his purposes. And ultimately, his purpose for you will never be frustrated, Christians. He's going to make you holy. He's going to change you. He's going to sanctify you. He's going to make you into the man or the woman that he has called you to be. God's purposes cannot be thwarted. And this is the greatest encouragement for you in hard days.